Happy Friday. Happy almost, well, we still got 9 days. Super Bowl Friday for the Pats Interference Podcast, part of the Tactical, Tastic, Tasty-licious CLNS Media Network. It's a real word, by the way, Tasty-licious. Dan Pizzuta, who is back for a really fun episode here today, mostly because we have outsourced the content and the questions to the good dear listeners of this podcast. So I guarantee it, if you got a football question, we'll answer it. But I thought the best way to kind of get the ball rolling this week was to identify the biggest matchups that favor the Patriots, and then those that are going to be problematic as we wade into the waters, which is really an ocean, as we know, for Super Bowl week of analysis in the coming days. This was harder than I expected. What did you make of this?
I thought this was kind of fun, and we were kind of talking earlier about just kind of thinking of the ways this game could go, and a couple of different paths. So it was fun to dive into.
Cool. A couple housekeeping notes, because Fridays are never straightforward. I always have to start and stop and just let people know what's been going on. But this week we have good reason to, because Drake Maye, as everybody has heard by now, has a shoulder injury, but the shoulder injury is really a little bit more that he's hurt. There's been no indication from anyone inside, outside the facility that Drake will miss Super Bowl 60. He himself has said, I'll be 99%, if not 100% come game. Just off the record on this public podcast, this is one of the storylines that kind of annoy me just because of the panic it fosters. And there's just uncertainty. Everyone does the same thing. I think he'll play, but I don't know. I'm a doctor. And we just have to sit with it. And that's been my best advice. But the bottom line is, I'm not really inclined to talk about this whole lot more. When he's listed on the injury report Wednesday and Thursday, says he's going to play, Mike Vrabel's not concerned. Until further notice, we'll leave it at that. Any objection?
No, that sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. Robert Spillane has not practiced. That certainly not as concerned as the quarterback having a less than 100% right shoulder, but I'm keeping my eye on that. The Patriots will also leave Sunday. If anyone listening to this is within driving distance or crazy enough to fly to see the Patriots fly themselves away from you, there is a send-off from the stadium. You can go. There is some weather to be expected, but if you want to go hang out, Dropkick Murphys is going to perform. I'm sure you'll hear Vrabel speak, Kraft, Drake Maye, etc. But that will lead us into the Super Bowl, as I will also be flying to the Super Bowl on Sunday. Okay, housekeeping is done. Oh, one final note. Callahan in the car, a character who visited us earlier this week, just wanted everyone to know he was upset that he forgot to mention that Drake Maye was not the only person running naked at the end of that Broncos game. He too was around his neighborhood after the Patriots were going back to the Super Bowl, thanks to that game-sealing play. So that's it for him. We will not hear from Callahan in the car for a while. The two best matchups for the Patriots, I think you and I, without having revealed our lists, have one at least that overlaps here. And the big name is the guy who has been big in the playoffs this year and big last season. His name is Milton Williams. And if he sees Anthony Bradford, that is bad news for Seattle. Am I wrong?
No, that was my first note here. Yeah, I have just kind of the interior also, when you have Milton Williams, Christian Barmore against Bradford specifically, but I think just the interior of that offensive line. I think that's where the Patriots have gotten a lot of pressure so far throughout this postseason. I think that is where the Seattle offense, just in general, probably the Seattle team in general, is the weakest at that spot. So I think that is a huge strength on weakness matchup, that if the Patriots are going to have something break right for them, it's going to happen there. I have right now, when Barmore and Williams have been on the field, including the playoffs, they have a 44.8% pressure rate, which over the course of the full season would have been first. I mean, they're fifth in general, including the playoffs. But it's just been absolutely insane to the point where when both of those guys are on the field, and I think that is really where they can exploit some of those matchups in that game across the line.
To be clear, 44% pressure rate would far and away lead every team in the season if extrapolated over a full year. And if you just think about getting to the line of scrimmage, if you're Sam Darnold, and flipping a coin, and that coin comes up heads and you're under pressure, that's kind of the proposition that you just laid out, because that coin means Christian Barmore and Milton Williams are on the field, and more often than not winning, because they're not playing 88% of the snaps, but within the 70 or whatever it is that they're playing, they're getting pressure. Yeah, look, I think there's just an old truth about this where your best players have to play their best in big games. But the fact that this aligns with the direct weakness of the Seahawks is what would give any Patriots player hope. Anthony Bradford, for those unfamiliar, gave up 6 pressures in the NFC Championship game. He is a poor pass protector who can and does have good games. Like if you were to go down his PFF page, there are enough 0s and 1s on there that you're like, oh, not so bad. But the bad games are bad, and I don't know from what you've watched of them aside from that. Gray Zabel's a good rookie guard, and you know they're young in the interior. Jake Sundell, their center. Is it Bradford and everybody else? Because that's at least what some of the numbers say when you look at Williams and Barmore versus this group.
Yeah, he's definitely the weak point in that. So per Sports Info Solutions, they had him 28th in blown block rate among right guards, which there's only 32 of them, so it's not great. So it is he is a little worse in run blocking. I think a lot of the play action that they do helps him a little bit in pass protection. And that's where I think maybe some of those grades, which, I don't look at very often for that, is probably better than what they would appear when you're watching him play. I think they do have a very good job of protecting him while they are running heavy play action. But that is part of it. If New England can get that interior pressure and kind of knock them out of being able to run play action as much as they usually do, then I think you're getting Sam Darnold into straight dropbacks. And I think that's when the game can potentially split, because for as much improved as Sam Darnold has kind of been, I think we kind of have the past couple games really in our head. He was fine this year, and over the second half of the season, still, not as good as he has kind of looked, especially in the first half of the season and in the playoffs. If you go back, he's 8th in EPA per play when not pressured, still 23rd when pressured. Like, this is still a very heavily dependent quarterback on whether he can stay clean in the pocket. So if the Patriots are able to disrupt him, which again, we've already just mentioned, this is the biggest strength on the biggest weakness, like that is definitely something that can impact the game.
One other way the Patriots tend to like to get pressure, and everyone has wisened up to this over the last few weeks because everyone's watching the Patriots nowadays. Their blitz pressure, and this was number 2 for me in terms of the biggest matchup advantages for the Patriots. And it's not a guarantee, right? Like, there's no just blitz button that you get to hit and there's automatic pressure that dispenses for you against Sam Darnold. Though if it was, the Patriots would win by 60. He was 14th in EPA per play versus the blitz this year, which is still a good enough number. The number that would be troubling if you're Seattle is that he had a 5% interception rate, meaning 1 out of every 20 dropbacks against the blitz, he's just throwing the ball away if he's not already dropping it with a fumble, of which he had a dozen this year. And lately, the Patriots blitz is not only just higher in quantity, and you're seeing it 40.5% of the time against Denver and 36.5% of the time against Houston on dropbacks. Their defensive success rates, do you care to guess, Dan Pizzuta, what they've been the last 2 days? Or last 2 days? Jeez, 2 games.
On the blitz, probably around 60, I would think, right? Higher.
78% against Houston, 73% defensive success rate against Denver. So again, that is overwhelming. They allowed 0.8 yards per play when blitzing against the Broncos. Even if you want to give the Jarrett Stidham adjustment, right? Bring it back to center and neutral situation, whatever, fine. It'll probably look like it did for Houston. 3.8 yards per play allowed against the blitz. So these numbers are off the charts. I think there is some commonalities here in terms of, they've have repeated their blitz pass. You'll see Jalen Hawkins through the B gap a lot, and that creates different issues. And when teams are running play action, this can kind of gum up those certain things. But the bottom line is, whether it's taking some schematic options off the table for Seattle or they're getting to Darnold, this is an area that if you're Seattle, you go, what are we going to do about this? Because this is a problem even before you get to the field. It's a problem now for their plan and their game planning.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things that you can then build off of that, which I know New England has also done, is the simulated pressure packages that come off the blitz. And that's how a lot of teams have really gotten Darnold, just completely changing the picture after the snap. And I think we've seen the Rams have been the best. We're the best team at this, like during the regular season in general, and just against Darnold. So I think when you're that heavy blitzing and you can still bring the pressure blitzing, you start dropping out and changing things, and Darnold doesn't know who's coming. I think that's really where you can get him as a quarterback too. That's where a lot of those turnovers happen. So I think not only just bringing everybody, showing everybody, and then dropping out is going to be as big of a part too.
Yeah, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, my notes for one of the mailbag questions that we had, but I do think there's an element of kind of setting the table that if you're the Patriots, you have to be willing to do for a later payoff, even if it means giving up a chunk play here or there. Like, you need to show certain looks to bait them into something later. And look, the Seahawks understand that kind of sequencing with play calling and game planning anyway. But it's in the heat of the moment, in heat of battle, to use a dramatic cliche, that it still comes into play, right? Like, so I like your point about that, and whether it is you want to come blitz, knowing you are eventually going to get to the sim pressure stuff to really protect you from the explosive plays, where Darnold has been among the best intermediate in deep throwers in football this year. And some of that is the play action piece, and other parts it's a clean pocket. But like, the dude is ripping it downfield. Not so much 0 to 9 yards. So there's stuff there that I think they're going to have to commit to early, whether or not, hey, this is our 100% best chance to get them off the field here. All right, let's bring some bad news. The worst matchup here for the Patriots against the Seahawks. Oh, unless you had one more.
Yeah. So my positive, I think, is going to be Drake May's legs against the Seattle defense, because this is still a defensive line that wants to be a little aggressive. So Seattle was 24th in success rate against quarterback design runs and scrambles. They were last in EPA per play. That's been a bit in the playoffs, because they've, Brock Purdy was that's all he could do in that game. So they did give up some scramble yards there. You had the Matthew Stafford high leverage, like, stumble scramble that he had on the third down to pick up a first. So in the regular season,
third down conversion at a few bars, like people just leaving and then doing exactly what Matthew Stafford did out the door. Yeah,
pretty much. So in the regular season, they were 16th in success rate, but 30th in EPA per play. So there's still, some high leverage. Like, Bryce Young was able to grab like a few. That was one of their big games. So I think Maye should not take a lot of time to be in the pocket if what they're planning on is not there. I think it's, take off and run, and that is probably going to be a part of the game plan, where if you can get some yards with your legs, like, do that, because that might be the second best option if the pass isn't going to go exactly where they were hoping. And I think that's where you can kind of just extend some plays a little bit, maybe get out of pressure before pressure really gets there. So I think that is going to be something that New England's going to want to really harp on in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's something Drake goes to right early in games. If it's not there, he's bailing, and that's what has led teams to drop 8 or use a spy. Like, you've seen teams. I mean, it goes to varying degrees, right? What's your personnel? How does it fit within the system that you have? Some teams just straight up don't believe in quarterback spies, and I get it. But if you can contain rush while still kind of collapsing the pocket, that's probably the best of both worlds. For me, this is going to be more of like a high leverage moment thing for him. Like, I don't want them to build the plane out of the scrambles, even if it is advantageous. And maybe Seattle will just give you those opportunities. It's just hard to know. And that really just means trusting him in the moment to make those decisions. And lately, frankly, I don't in the first quarter, just because of how jittery he seemed. And if I was 23 and an NFL quarterback playing in the biggest game of my life, and then the new biggest game of my life, and then the new biggest game of my life, and then the freaking Super Bowl, I would have jitters too. But I am really curious, because if he is calm, or they're able to weaponize that, you're absolutely right. That's a big plus for the Patriots. Okay. I got ahead of myself. The bad news. I will go first. Seattle's run defense, I just cannot stress enough how insanely good this is. And so this, and my other bad matchup for the Patriots is less, hey, you suck at this and they're great at it.
Yeah.
It's more that they're just so good in this area. It's a problem for everybody. Specific to the run defense. Get a load of this. Number 1 by DVOA, number 1 by success rate allowed, number 1 by EPA per play allowed, explosive runs allowed. And the gap between them and the number 2 team by DVOA is the same gap in the rankings between number 2 and number 14. And you go, wow, that's pretty bad. It gets worse. The gap between them as the top ranked team by EPA per play allowed, and the gap between the number 2 team and the number 18 team is the same when you look at their EPA per play allowed against the run. The Patriots have been an average-ish run blocking team. Morgan Moses has been really good as of lately. Mike Onwenu, you and I talked about sleeper Pro Bowl case. It's just going to be so hard. And short yardage, especially where Seattle's third and you're still bottom 10, is just going to be an issue for them. So this is very much we want to run the ball. We want to run it well. You need to run well enough. And even that might be asking too much against this defense.
Yeah, and that's just Seattle. The defensive line is so good. They penetrate in ways that it really doesn't matter who the offensive line across from them are. You have Leonard Williams, who's been incredible inside, Byron Murphy, who's been incredible inside. And then that's where their linebackers really play at their best when those guys are coming downhill. Ernest Jones, kind of just one of the best, just kind of deciphering where the gap is that he needs to be in, and is rarely ever in the wrong spot. So he's going to fill it that way. And then you have all their defensive backs who are all psychos and all want to fit the run in an insane way. Nick Emenwari is going to be around in the box, and he's a guy who's going to go forward at 100 miles an hour. You have Devin Witherspoon too. So you have all of these guys who are not afraid to run up to the line of scrimmage and make a play in their run fit. So that is something that it's not just the defensive line. It is like the entire 11 defenders on the field are ready to play the run and fly downhill at any second. And that's what makes Seattle's defense so dangerous.
Their defensive backs fall into the category of those that I would fear the most. And this is nothing. I don't have any statistics to back this up. It's simply vibes. Like, they're trash talking, and they deserve it every single time that they trash talk. This is not like the deep incompletion that the dude drops, and then you get the big incomplete from the DB who is 5 yards behind him. This is, I'm absolutely laying you out, and then I'm going to let you know about it, and I'm coming back for more. And, oh, by the way, I'm the smallest guy in the field, but I hit just as hard as everybody else. Like, this is an awesome group, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because Witherspoon, as we know, bounces between nickel, and he'll place him outside, and so, like, fitting in there as a run. And Minori, like, is everywhere, frankly, also at nickel as their hyper athletic safety. And for people who don't know, Nick Emenwari tested as one of the best athletes ever to go through the combine last February. So that's a dude that even when he's off the screen, there goes Ramondre. He's getting past the line of scrimmage. He might be stopped dead there and there, right there and there, because just how good that kid is. And also score one for the workout warriors, who I've been like sick of, like, they're going to play football, not lift weights and run. That dude can do everything, and he's a really exciting player.
Depends on the position for
true.
Guys
Not to We're not swinging all the way back, but I just, I'm just glad to be wrong every once in a while on that stuff, especially with the scouting. We don't want to get too bored of ourselves and what we think we know around the draft. Was that on your list?
So no, but I did have the edge rushers against the tackles. I think is going to be something to watch, just because I think we've kind of seen Will Campbell struggle a little bit, which might be a little bit of an understatement here, just in the playoffs. And these are edge rushers who, again, are not going to be it's not a Will Anderson that you're going against, but these are guys that both Boy Maffei and DeMarcus Lawrence were. Maffei was 8th in pass rush win rate during the regular season. Lawrence was 15th. These are guys that just know how to win, can get in the backfield, can get off the line quickly. And I think we've seen when the edge pressure can get there so far in the playoffs, Drake Maye, as his pressure to sack rate is something we've talked about, has gone up significantly in the playoffs just because of how quickly some pressure has gotten in there. It hasn't always been consistent pressure because he wasn't really pressured as often, but when this offensive line lost, like, they lost quickly. And that's what has really, made those sacks really detrimental to the offense when, they were hurting them a little bit. So I think Seattle is kind of one of these defensive lines that can get in the backfield quickly. So that's something I really want to watch in this game.
Yeah, a lot of talent there, a lot of depth. I mean, they go 4 deep at edge, so those guys are fresh, and that's where you're like, DeMarcus Lawrence is kind of old. It's like he doesn't have to play as often as he did earlier in his career, and that's like a game plan decision. Sometimes the playoffs cut it loose, and that's why his snap counts are higher. But overall, they've done a really good job, and this is a case where they got 4 guys who have 6 sacks or more. Most of them are on the edge, but it's not like, they don't have a double-digit sack guy. It comes in waves, and that's what wears you down more than we have to slide or kick or boot away from this one player. It's a really good front. What was your worst matchup for the Patriots?
So it is just kind of the middle of the field a little bit. And it's one of those things where the numbers say that the Patriots have been pretty good throughout the year, but kind of when you look at the individual pieces, like the linebackers individually haven't been great in coverage, although the short middle of the field area has been good. It's kind of where I worry about when you're looking at Barner and Cooper Kupp, who has been a bigger part of the Seattle offense over the past couple of weeks. I just think that is an area where if they can just kind of pepper that to a high success rate, I think that makes it kind of tough on the Patriots. And I just don't think that's where they match up quite as well as they might have against, some other teams in that area.
Yeah, and that'll be a case too of JSN's gravity, right? And we're going to get to JSN here in a second, because if you are committing extra resources away from him, you're pulling it probably away from the middle of the field. And it could be a safety over the top. It could be a nickel giving help. It could be just tilting some certain zones. And the Patriots over the middle have gotten better. They're still not as good as you would find most defenses there. And part of it's personnel, part of it's scheme, where they're going to play, about as much open field, meaning split safety coverage, as you would close middle of the field. So they're 12th against middle of the field passes. I'm not as concerned about them there, partly because I've seen a real improvement from guys like Christian Ellis, who are flying around like absolute maniacs. But it is an area where if Seattle does be able to kind of pick at that matchup and they find success, you can't allow that to continue for much longer. And what the adjustment there is going to open something up elsewhere. And that's where you might just be kind of playing catch up in a way that no one wants to, but especially in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I come down on it.
Yeah. So I mentioned Jaxon Smith-Njigba. His matchup against Christian Gonzalez has me more excited than probably any in this entire game, aside from the schematics, which I think are going to be really fascinating. So it would stand to reason that he shouldn't be on this list of worst matchups. There's Christian Gonzalez. He's a top 5 corner in football. Patriots were second to last against number 1 receivers this year. It's just a fact. And part of that is Gonzalez, I think, being a little bit slower to come back. Part of it is he's not shadowing as much as he did in previous years under Maye and Belichick. They only gave up 6 catches for 56 yards, but a lot of touchdowns to guys like him. And I think they are going to be stressed, like a lot of defenses are. As the Rams saw, he'll go into the backfield. He'll be in the slot. He'll be outside. They'll manipulate your coverage, double teams, whatever it might be, with motion, drag you away, throw it the opposite side. And I trust Christian Gonzalez a lot. This is just a matter of Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a top 5 receiver in football. That is a problem. I do not care who you are. And anytime he is against, say, Marcus Jones, who I have all the respect for, it's just easy money for them for the most part. And Carlton Davis even, that there's a DPI that's going to happen in this game, and they just have to hope it's 20 yards and not 40. Like that's just what it is. So that's a stress, and just in terms of the power and the gravity of that player, that even if Christian Gonzalez does a good job, they might be able to weaponize that extra attention or Gonzalez and take him out of the play that other players in the league just can't, because they're only, in my opinion, at least 4 receivers better than him. Even if, again, you feel good about the primary defender if he is that next Sunday. JSN is just so good.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to frame it, and the way they've been able to weaponize him across the formation, like you talked about. So it's not just going to be this, one-on-one. We're gonna just leave him on the outside and in isolation, and those two are just gonna go at each other all game. It's not gonna be that way. JSN's gonna move around. Like for the first 2 years of his career, which is now insane. He was a low A-dot slot player, which I think completely wasted him, but like he can still win that way. He can still win in screens. And like you said, the way they get him in the backfield to manipulate coverage and just kind of change the picture and really force New England to then communicate to figure out who is going in there. One of the things, and Seattle was so good at that. I just remember the Rams tried that with Nakua on the 3rd down, I think, before the 4th down that they ended up failing in the goal line. And everyone on Seattle was just like, yeah, Nakua's in the backfield, like look out. And it's going to be one of those things where Seattle is real good at getting JSN into spots where he's just going to be wide open. And then he's just such a good route runner and so smooth. And so if you are in the right spot, he could be in a different spot within an instant. So it's one of those things where the coverage matchup is something I do trust, but just the way they use him is how he's gotten so many yards throughout the season.
Yeah. Cool little wrinkle here. He and Christian Gonzalez grew up in the same area, so there's a history there. And I think we'll hear a lot more about that as we do about everything around Super Bowl week. I was trying to think as you were explaining that what the like real life comp would be for someone who spends their first 2 years at work and then in the third year just booms because the new manager or coach or boss was just like, oh no, you're much better at this. And what I landed on is like, you could be a fine, I don't know, pop singer and you're singing in a particular octave. And then someone just is like, why don't you try country? And you can go for like this, or maybe it's the inverse. I don't know. Whatever the bigger range is going to give you and just that style or flip or usage or genre, you just take off and are suddenly atop the charts every single week as he is with, I think, what is it? 119 catches for a league high 1,793 yards. So congrats to JSN and all of his Billboard top hits. Okay. Mailbag time. You ready?
Yep. Let's do it.
Good. We're going to give the people one question, then we're going to take a quick break. But I want to start here because I think this is a totally fair question that would probably be annoying me listening to folks, if I were a fan, talk about the Patriots' opponents. Is Seattle actually the number one defense in football, according to any sports fan 2K? Because we've heard this about Houston, and some people said it about Denver. I did not say it about Denver, but that's been out there. What say you, Dan Pizzuta?
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. This is for pretty much the whole season. They've been number one in DVOA. They're number one in both pass and rush DVOA, which does not happen very often. They are far and away the best defense. It just kind of, takes how we talk about what the best defense is. I think Tony Romo during Buffalo games said multiple times that they were the best pass defense in the league. And that's because they had the fewest passing yards against them. And they didn't have the fewest passing yards against them because they were the best pass defense. They had the fewest passing yards because they were one of the worst run defenses in the league and no one needed to throw on them. So the way that is talked about, I think we just need to get much better at. But yes, Seattle is unquestionably the best defense in the league, and they really have been all season.
I'm almost at the point of ban total yards as a primary metric.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you anything. It really doesn't.
It's 2026. We had to wean ourselves off it, and people get used to what's DVOA? Is Callahan having a stroke with the EPAs and the this and the that? You can go by yards per play is even by itself.
Per play is fine. Absolutely.
Per play is totally fine. Points. How about that? The goal is not to allow the fewest yards, and you remove all the context and how good is the opponent and what their actual goals are, throwing turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, Seattle, and you hit it on the head. You can't be better than number one versus run and number one versus pass. They do not give up big plays. And part of this is structural in that, they're going to primarily play with the two high shell, and their defensive front is good enough to get pressure and kind of control the run with a light box, but then they want to spice it up and play some single high. They can do that too. They've got a good pressure package. I would say the one case for Houston would be, okay, if we're just going to line up and everyone knows what everyone else is doing, which is often the case with the Texans, that might be a harder defense to beat one-on-one, but the combination and the utilization of the scheme, the players within the scheme, is what puts Seattle over the top in addition to the consistency. So yeah, they're number one for me. Okay, we got a lot more questions to get to, but a quick break now to tell you about PrizePicks. We're going to have a big PrizePicks episode coming up next week, and it's not just because PrizePicks has been good to us on this podcast. It is because when you watch the Super Bowl, there will be no place better, and I'm telling you, everyone is going to want your attention and your time and this and that, to watch the game and win money than PrizePicks. You can use our picks for what we think will happen, and it is this simple. You pick a player, you pick a stat, you go more than, less than. Hunter Henry, I think, is going to come up as a tight end with certain receiving yards. If you like Drake Maye, though, and his rushing yards, as Dan just laid out with the scrambles, you go more than or you go less than, and you take Drake and you put him into a lineup. Your lineup could be 2 players, 3, 4, 5, or 6, as long as you go more than or less than with the accompanying stat. Which, again, you can pick the stat. This is all up to you. That's it. That's how PrizePicks works. And let's say you do a lineup of 3 to 4 players, but the first 2 hit and you would like your money, please. No problem. Early payouts allow you to go with your players. If they get off to a hot start, you can have the option to cash out those winnings right away. So get a head start. Download the PrizePicks app, not Super Bowl Sunday, but today, and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Psycho Joe Missoula checking in. Always wonder what folks who have accounts named after them and then some sort of adjective that they did not approve think of this. But I don't know. Maybe Joe Mazzulla would like it. Quote, Josh McDaniels always has a wrinkle in the biggest games. Anything you've seen them put on tape that they could break tendency on and spit into a trick play. And Joe Mazzulla went to the first place I thought of. I don't know about you. Tonga rushing touchdown. Just that's purely vibes choice. Thayer Munford Jr. touchdown reception, which I wrote about last month. Give me your trickiest. Those were my answers. I've advocated for a hook and lateral, though we don't really see this from McDaniels, who already wasted his obligatory every 5 years Patriots postseason direct snap to the running back in Denver. What say you?
Yeah, I think the Tonga touchdown might be it. I think we need to get rid of the multiple defensive tackle attempt at the quarterback sneak, whatever that was. That just needs to burn that. But I think if you can get one of the tackles on the field for, as a fullback, and throw it, that's probably the closest we're going to get. But I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't really anything, especially with this. It's going to be, trickery in maybe some other way and not necessarily, getting cute trying to throw to someone who's 300 pounds.
Yeah. I'm going to make one play call prediction. Here it is. And everyone's going to hate it, for the record. This is either going for 4 yards or it's going for -4 yards. There will be a play action, fake end around into a running back screen that, again, will be somewhere near midfield and just goes nowhere. And that, I don't know if it falls into your trick play, but that to me is going to pop up. We've seen this in playoff games. It's in the playbook. There's something there. It's a lot of motion. You need to be able to hold up or distract a disciplined pass rush. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. I don't think it will. There you go. Pyramid, the podcast. We have a record here, Dan, which I know you got one of these because I sent you a screenshot and the link. I didn't realize until just before we started, this man asked one question and then replied to himself twice, or this person, I should say. And so we have 3. This is the history in the podcast that we were making. So we're gonna go quickly. These are good questions. So that's why I want to get to all of them. The first one, am I wrong to think that coach versus coach, position versus position, that the Patriots might be better than the Seahawks? Doesn't guarantee anything, just an observation. I don't agree, but you tell me.
Yeah, you're wrong to think that. It's okay. It doesn't mean the game won't be close, but you were wrong. The Seahawks are objectively better in just about every spot, which is fine. But it's going to be a fun game. You're wrong to think they're better.
So the case for the Patriots would not be that they are better in more positions and coaches, because they're not, and they're also ahead. Like, this is year 2 for Mike Macdonald. They play in a more difficult conference. They just beat the Rams twice, who are better than probably any team on the Patriots schedule that they have faced, let alone beat Broncos, Chargers, Houston, obviously near the top of that list with Buffalo. The only case for the Patriots is that you leverage your strengths, meaning Milton Williams, who we already talked about, and Drake Maye, to a degree that it I would say that it, how do I want to put this? Compensates for, that is the way that I want to put this, all of those other deficiencies where you're looking at their pass rush versus your offensive line, your receivers versus their defensive back. Like, there are a lot of areas that you're not doing this. And the Seahawks are very, very well coached. Clint Kubiak might be the Raiders head coach Monday after the Super Bowl. Mike Macdonald might be coach of the year, if not Mike Vrabel. I get where he's going with that, but the Patriots' hope lies with Drake Maye and Milton Williams, not that, oh, we're better in most places. I don't know who would tell you that outside of New England. Question number 2. Why do you think Vrabel and McDaniels might talk? Who do you think Vrabel and McDaniels might talk to outside the Patriots organization for counsel to get more insight into Seattle? Are there inside relationships with divisional foes? He threw out someone that I wrote about today in my column, which was John Stryker, a.k.a. Stretch, a.k.a. ex-Rams game coordinator and advisor to Sean McVay last year, who also let him coach and be involved in the analytics. Because Stretch could just call McVay and say, all right, what do you got? And I would, given that the Rams scored 37 on Seattle. They scored 27 on Seattle. They had 20 explosive plays in 4 games. Thomas Brown's another one. So those are the only 2 guys I thought of.
Yeah, I mean, probably someone involved in that. The Rams are just so unique because of the way they have Puka and Stafford, who are just going to hit like those deep digs over behind the linebackers that no one else in the league can really hit. Like, as much as we love Drake Maye and some of the receivers that they have, like they don't have anyone who's going to be able. Like, no one else in the league has that. It's just a way that the Rams can get to some of those plays and no one else can, which if you can like try to figure out how to scheme that up, it's going to be really hard. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean there are body types here, but Puka Nacua is a one of one, and Matthew Stafford is where Drake Maye will be soon. I think in terms of the creativity, the arm strength, and the vision, but like he's not there yet, and you just have to look at their playoff side by side to see why. But Matt Collins would be my answer. Backside dig, just kind of get a bigger catch radius. But Matt Collins, as we all know and are aware, no one needs to say anymore, is not Puka Nacua. Last one from Pyramid the podcast. We always heard stories about Belichick going back to old game film and game plans to spring on new matchups, I guess, to use in new games. Would Vrabel go as far back as seeing ghosts, that 19 game on Monday Night Football for Sam Darnold versus the old Patriots to inform their game plan? Have you heard him mention old games? No, he has not mentioned old games, primarily because he doesn't want to mention anything old from the dynasty, and I respect it because this is something new. They have their own identity. He is very mindful, as a lot of the good coaches are in press conferences, that when he speaks to people like me, he's really speaking to the players. So whatever message he shares with me will inevitably get back to a family member or the player himself. He doesn't want to talk about stuff that's in the past or put that stress or pressure or attachment on them. So the answer is no. I do think, though, I mean, sure, you got the time. Like you might not go to a whole Sam Darnold game from last year, but you better believe that Vikings tape, or excuse me, some of the Rams tape from last year's playoffs and other blitz stuff that worked against Darnold when he was in Minnesota. I would take a look.
Yeah, and the whole seeing ghost thing was kind of what we talked about earlier, where you're showing blitz. He's expecting someone to be in a place where they don't end up being, or the other way around, where he's not expecting someone to be when he throws the ball and they just end up being there. And that's just kind of what's screwing him up. And that's what the whole, seeing ghosts thing was. A lot of pressure looks, some simulated pressures, just changing what he was expecting to see on the play. And that led to sacks and interceptions. And that's where teams have been able to get Darnold so far. So I think there are plenty of things you can probably look at that will get to there. It doesn't have to be necessarily, a specific game. That's just the type of play that has really screwed with him. So I would expect that to just kind of be part of the plan in general.
Yeah, for sure. Corey Walter, are there any weaknesses that our receiving core can exploit in their secondary? Do you see Diggs or Booty having a big game?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think maybe the Booty thing might be interesting just because there might just be some close contact that you can maybe get away with there. And Booty's been so good at some of the contested catches, but I think, Woolen for everything that, kind of people talk about and then the penalty, and then they went right back to him at the touchdown. Tariq Woolen has been really good this year. He's like one of the better corners in the league. So I think it is going to be tough to consistently try to depend on winning one-on-one, and especially just kind of if you're trying to take some of those shots downfield, which the Patriots were so good at this year. I don't know if that's something you're going to consistently rely on. So it is those one-on-one matchups are going to be kind of tough.
I don't see a big game really for either of them. If it is for Booty, we know how that's going to happen, right? Like it is just the shots down the sideline. They hit one, maybe it's two or one and the touchdown. And there you go. Cause that's just been the formula for him. And he's very good at it. Diggs over the middle of the field is going to have a problem against the best defense over the middle of the field. And especially if, I don't think Devin Witherspoon would travel, but in certain high leverage moments, they might be wise to do that. I think this is a tight ends game, and Seattle's weakness still only has them average against tight ends by DVOA. And that to me is where I'm looking at early. And like I said, we'll talk about that more in the big PrizePicks episode. And next week with Bill Barnwell doing the kind of sleeper Super Bowl heroes. So maybe not Super Bowl MVP, but guys who could swing the game you don't expect. You'll see a tight end or two listed on there. So that's more where I'm looking than Diggs or Booty. Pigskin Enjoyer. Hey, dude, how do you feel our defensive interior compares to their offensive interior, really counting on our big boys to wreak havoc up the middle of the pocket to win the game? I think you and I covered this, unless you have anything more.
No, I think that's completely right. That is the matchup you should be watching. And if the game goes the Patriots' way, it's because that was a matchup that was exploited, and Barmore and Williams were just in the backfield, just wreaking havoc.
I'll throw two more names in there just because they deserve their flowers. Number one, Corey Durden as pass rusher suddenly is climbing up every efficiency charts like they are the Empire State Building, and he is King Kong, and he is hanging out there. No one has been able to take King Kong Corey Durden off the top just quite yet. and Kairos Tonga versus the run. Soft spot in my heart for that big dude. He's outstanding. That could be a stop where they're not great in short yardage, but if they are, he's the guy probably showing up to do some damage, not named Milton Williams or Christian Barmore. Russell Stevens. All right, you're in the team meeting room. Do you match Christian Gonzalez with JSN or double JSN and have Christian Gonzalez on the other boundary receiver?
Yeah, I put Gonzalez on JSN because I think you're just kind of wasting Gonzalez otherwise, because the way Seattle's offense is structured, they don't really have a second outside receiver, and not really one they throw to. So especially when you look at man coverage. So to this up, JSN has a 37.3% target share against man coverage for Seattle. So, and the next is Cooper Kupp. So you're not going to be sliding Gonzalez into the slot to be going to Kupp. And then third is AJ Barner. So you're really not worried about Shaheed or whoever else they put on the outside as a realistic option on most passing plays. So I think it would be a waste of Gonzalez to have him covering whoever that is. And then I would still trust Gonzalez against JSN rather than Davis and a safety over the top for most of the game. So I think you'd be kind of wasting Gonzalez if you didn't match him up on JSN as much as you possibly could.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Shaheed is an issue, but you know what those problems are. Like it's you just have to stay over the top on him and play top down. Like, okay,
Yeah.
you want to curl, you want to quick out, fine. Like that's not a well they're going to go to over and over and over again. He's a shot player. The answer for me though is you have to give different answers because Clint Kubiak is too good just to say, oh, you want a shadow? Like they've had 2 weeks to think about this. They'll have counters right away. This is a case where, Dan, I think this particular wrinkle within this matchup, as a lot of teams use motion to kind of uncover coverage and get defensive tells. When Gonzalez is shadowing him, they need to be in zone, I think, a good amount early in this game to say, we've got all of our options. And the Patriots used to do this with Stephon Gilmore, and I've tweeted out clips, years ago, but he would shadow Tyreek Hill, for example, against Kansas City. And Tyreek Hill would motion into the slot. You go, okay, man coverage, he followed it from the outside. Now he's on the inside. And then the snap would come, and he's running the middle, running the pull in cover 2. Because everyone understood the whole bigger picture concept of the play and everyone's individual assignments. So when you just have to change your position pre-snap from I'm on the outside, okay, I'm the flat player, to now I'm in the middle, I'm going to be running down the middle between the 2 deep safeties in cover 2. That all works. That's the stuff I think the Patriots need to get to say, yeah, Christian Gonzalez is going to be here all day, buddy. We're not moving. Except when we want to and we're playing zone. You know what I mean? Like that's the cat and mouse game that I think, okay, you say he shadows. It can't be man coverage all the time because no one plays man coverage all the time.
Right.
And early on, that is something I think Zach Core needs to show. And that, again, that I think they get to later when they want to and have to play man coverage, they can do it. But there's a little bit of doubt in Seattle's mind.
Yeah, and the Seattle defense is really good at this because they have all of those demons at defensive back who can do whatever they need to do. So I think that does make a lot of sense. Like we said, earlier in the show, it's not going to be, even if they do go into, we want Gonzalez on JSN as much as we can, it's not going to be a one-on-one isolated matchup. That's not how Seattle plays offense. And that's not going to be how New England plays defense in this game. But I think that should be the plan, instead of, trying to put Gonzalez elsewhere and throwing multiple resources at JSN in coverage. I don't think that is the way to go.
Yeah, the one, like, for example, had the Rams made the Super Bowl, then I think it's a conversation. You take away Devontae Adams and you double Puka, or you want to do vice versa. To me, that would have been a better solution. But like you said, there's just the drop off from JSN to anybody else and the way that they give him attention. It's not even like, you might think the world of Rashid Shaheed. You could be his cousin listening to this and pissed that we're just saying he's a 2-trick pony. Fine. The Seahawks think the same thing. Like, at least that's how they use him. All right, let's go through a couple of these a little more quickly. Keith, players from last year who have improved the most in 2025. So these are not just rookies, just guys who are on the roster. And he has for 3. I came with 3 pretty quickly. Kayshon Boutte, who we've talked about, and that's a maturity thing as much as his play. Christian Ellis, who I've talked about a lot. This has been more second half of the season, and there's a better scheme fit, and but the numbers are the numbers. Speaking of the numbers, there are only a handful of guys like Jalen Hawkins, multiple sacks, multiple picks, forced fumble in there. That's another better scheme fit, but he's also been way better than any other time in his career. And he's bounced around a little bit. So this is not just like, oh, finally I got in that quarters man kind of system. Like he's been awesome.
Yeah. So I had Booty. I think Drake Maye is in there. I think.
Oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
I would say the potential MVP quarterback did improve a little bit over his rookie year.
I'm going to take a timeout. Dan, you steer the ship the next however long you want. Tell me when you need me. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I think, he improved just a little bit. And then the other one who, wasn't on the roster last year, but is someone who's playing better than he has ever played in his career, K'Lavon Chaisson, who, we've talked about previously. He's just the way he's played this year, like there is no time during his career where he's come close to this. So a little cheating since he wasn't on the roster last year, but just what he's been able to do in this defense has been incredible.
Can I come out now?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm not good. Even Chaisson's probably better than any of the players that I listed. Like, this is a classic case of being a little too in the weeds. Drake never entered my mind, but is absolutely number one with the bullet. He was literally named the PFWA's most improved player, none of the Patriots, all of football. God, it's going to stick with me the rest of today. Honorable mentions at the risk of, forgetting another guy who might win MVP. Ramondre Stevenson, not as much of a developmental story as just like, this is the best we've seen from him in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. And Mike Onwenu a little bit, which is more like guys finding their talent level again, which is just kind of nice to see. I'm going to do like 100 push-ups after this is done. Luke Areno, do you think Durden and Ponder can develop into legit starting caliber players? Where do they need to improve the most to see more playing time moving forward? So Ponder is very much a rotational pass rushing player. Durden has been good against run and pass. I think for him, it's more of a just prove over time this isn't a fluke, which when I hear that answer from players and coaches, it's just like, oh, it's just the consistency part. Like, okay, that's true, but you can consistently suck. And congrats on your consistency. You suck. You need to do more of the good things. And for him, I do think there is an element of, prove that you can play across the defensive line a little bit more. Like Milton Williams being able to kick out to the 5 technique and Christian Barmore's doing that a little bit. And he's bounced around, don't get me wrong. But that to me tells me, hey, you can play anywhere, meaning within the defensive alignment and within any scheme, which I think is kind of the question here.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you have to be to be a starter. But for him to be a useful, just more than a rotational piece, I think is a plus already, even if that's what he axes out as. It's been a lot of good production there. But I think that's it. He's going into just being a plus player as part of that roster, regardless.
Matt Jenkins, Stephon Diggs, or Hunter Henry, who needs to step up most in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it. It's going to be more of a tight end game. And I think if one of them ends up having a big game, it's going to be Henry in some way, because I think it's just going to be real hard to get Diggs, I think, that involved to where he's going to have some breakout, like 100-yard game. But I think Henry kind of over the middle of the field, like you said, Seattle 16th in DVOA against tight ends, which that's still not something you want to exploit. But when you look at what they are against everyone else, that's kind of their biggest weakness in coverage. So I think it might be a Henry gets a couple of chunk plays and something like that. And that's how they're going to get some of the passes against this defense.
Yeah. And look, this isn't to sound dismissive of Diggs. Don't get us wrong. This is Seattle feels comfortable with all of its, corner matchups. And as Matt just highlighted in the question, I didn't include this, but he says, look, outside of a great quote, having a great TD catch, neither has produced at the regular season level in the playoffs, end quote. He's right. And some of this, I think, for Hunter Henry, had a lot of good matchups against Denver. Did have a drop. That's on him. The snow is not on him. Drake Maye having his least accurate start ever is also not on him. So I think he'll bounce back. But the question with Diggs for me is not so much will he get open, will he catch the ball? It's will his most improved MVP quarterback stare him down on third downs, because we saw that against Denver and they fooled him in that first drive. But that to me is something Seattle's going to be waiting for, and Drake just has to go to the open guy. which he's done a really, really good job of. Don't get me wrong, but there's going to be a compulsion or a feeling to go to Diggs because he's been so good in those spots, and I just think Seattle's going to have more answers for him.
Yeah, it's just a tough matchup. Like if this was going to be
yeah.
against the Rams, like this would have been a Diggs game completely.
Yes.
So it's just the way the matchup ended up. Yeah.
Jack says football players are stereotyped as jocks, but many players sound to me more like nerds who happen to have maximally nerded out on their sport in addition to the usual things many of us nerd out on. Does this armchair observation jibe with your interaction with players? Yeah, look, maybe, again, this is a case of me just being very myopic and head in the weeds and missing stuff like the jock stereotype, which I think is antiquated, frankly. But if it's still out there, and I'm sure it's shared by some folks, yeah, these are guys who are incredibly dedicated to what they do, which is highly specialized, right? Like you're not going to have a resume that says I can break down trap two coverage and I can play nickel or outside corner. Let me go work on Wall Street. But like the level to which they understand these concepts and are able to react in the athletic genius, I think is up there with a lot of performers and or people who are in really specialized areas. So yes, I think, Jack, your observation, which I guess I'm still digesting, is fair. And not to mention, these guys have more diverse interests. Like Marcus Jones records his own music and is really good at it. A guy like Joe Tooney went and got went to business school when he was still in the league. Ted Karras, really high up in the PA. Like there's a lot more there than just football, but they're still really dedicated to football in a way that it takes more in different types of intelligence than I think people give them credit for is my answer.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I think they still are doing football in the same way. I think that, the old school football people used to, and there's more to it. The game is much more complex now too. And there's also just more things to do outside. Like think about what the guys in the 80s like could have done outside of football. And there's just not a lot. So when you do have like, if you want to say like nerdy interests, like, yeah, there are a bunch of like young guys who are growing up with the internet and things. So I think just naturally that's what personalities are going to be. And we're just kind of seeing those people playing football too. So I don't think, there's some crazy huge shift, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's also the mistake of broad brushing everybody, right?
Yeah.
It's not that they're all not dumb jocks. Like you got a mix of people like anyone you would have in your life in a big, large group or at a single workplace. Some people are there just for the paycheck. Others are not. There are many of those in New England. Other guys are just about football. Others are not, but it's a little bit of everything. All right, we got two more. Gary goes, which current free agent is the best fit to help the Patriots get 10 wins against a harder schedule next year? And then goofy question, he says, which player in the roster is most likely to become a coach after their career ends? I'm going to go with the youngest player on the roster there, Will Campbell. I think that dude has a spot to coach high school football in Louisiana whenever he wants to retire, which will not be anytime soon, don't get me wrong. But that, like talk about interest. Like I joke that he's Mike Vrabel's Louisiana love child, and it's because of their attitudes towards football. And people knew that Mike Vrabel was going into coaching midway through his career. That's how I feel about Will Campbell, what he loves, what he's about, who he is. So, but what about a free agent?
Yeah, so I have a couple. I mean, Trey Hendrickson would be fun. Just throwing that out there if you want a player that's really going to potentially, change the team. But some other ones, Cam Curl, safety from the Rams. I think that would be a really fun fit. I think safeties are still a weird position that teams don't know how to value. Like 2 years ago, Cam Curl signed for like 2 years and $9 million, which is absolutely insane. He's such a better player than that. But is the position that like still consistently hits the free agent market. So I think like someone like that, there's a couple safeties, but I think I put Cam Curl on the top of that list. And if you want to just like kind of fill in linebacker a little more, like Devin Bush was really good in Cleveland this year, was really just kind of all over the field, made a lot of high value tackles, was pretty good in coverage. So I think it's just going to kind of incrementally be guys like that who can just kind of build out the depth, be, just plus players. But outside of a Hendrickson, there aren't going to be any of those game changers that get into the free agent market anymore because teams just don't allow those guys to hit the market. So it's going to be like a Curl or something like that. It's probably going to help.
I'm just going to co-sign. I will say, and this is not to pause and be dramatic, but I just want to put this in the right way. without any real reporting. There's gonna be a lot of a lot of speculation about like Max Crosby potentially being on the trade block, and I think the Raiders have expressed they don't want to trade for him. That is the exact type of swing. Let's say the Patriots do not win the Super Bowl, maybe they do, and they want to pursue him anyway. I think he would be a hand in glove fit here in New England, where he does have some fans. Which is to say, Max Crosby probably has fans in every building, but
I would believe so.
That's not something that I would call crazy fan fantasy. Like, I think that's something that would have a real discussion if it came to it. You got the cap space, you'd have the draft assets, you would have everything to go make that happen and get a guy at a premium position where if Caleb Von Chason leaves, you'll get a big, giant, fat contract, which I think he will. And maybe he resigns. I don't know. Either way, he's getting paid. Max Crosby is a name I'm going to entertain more than like a lot of big names who come up and we talk about in this podcast because for all those reasons. Last one, we have to talk about Belichick. Grand Jordanian, who ends on a UConn Huskies question, and we're not going to answer that just because this is a football podcast, and it was all football questions answered edition. How can a guy like Bill Polian have a vote if he can't remember who he voted for? You know, I think that's a great question, Dan.
I do as well. I think we've moved past the need for Bill Polian, just kind of around football things. It's fine. He had his time. Again, like Hall of Fame voting is bad. I think even before this, just like throwing 50 people in a room to like make oral presentations about the candidates, that's the least inefficient. That's the most inefficient way I could think of having that entire process. For all that, baseball has kind of been weird with their Hall of Fame, like sending a ballot and checking off names, like do that. Is this guy a Hall of Famer? Yes. Fine. Do that. I think the Hall of Fame voting has been weird for a while. I think capping it at 5 players normally, and then whatever they did weird for the contributors section this year is even weirder. I think the entire thing just needs to be completely revamped. But again, Bill Belichick should just be a Hall of Famer. I don't care what your voting system is. He should have been elected to the Hall of Fame, like with every single vote. So that's also how it goes.
Yeah, I think they could do well with some personnel changes on that committee. When you just look at people who have not really covered the league for years and are hanging around. And look,
Yeah.
If I was retired, and I had a vote, I wouldn't want to give it up. That's probably one of the coolest things I have going. But it should happen. I think they should change the process. There's no world in which you should pool owners with Hall of Fame head coaches and then players who are hanging around and force people to pick 3 out of the 5 that are making it, which again, you're only allowed to vote for 3 in this coach contributor category, which would really be split off. It's not. And yeah, vote for Bill Belichick, who should have been a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer. People have been indignant about this for days, so I don't want to spend too much more time about it. It is obvious. It should be obvious. There is both a broken system and a broken brain, apparently, shared by a few different people regarding Bill Belichick, because he should, the greatest coach of all time, should have been in there. It just is what it is. All right. We have a big week of content coming up here in the show. What do you have coming up for the Super Bowl, aside from more great analysis like the folks just got a taste of here today?
Yeah, that'll be it. I'll write a big preview. They usually do like what to look out. Both sides of the ball. Been doing that for a couple of years, so I'll be posting that on socials. Outside of the Super Bowl, have a bunch of off-season previews up at Yahoo Sports, just kind of looking at the cap space, pending free agents, and things that the eliminated teams so far have are going to be looking at for the offseason. That's at Yahoo. Patriots and Seahawks will be up on probably Sunday night or next Sunday after the Super Bowl. So we have that to look forward to too, and just a bunch of stuff. I'll be hanging around on socials and Blue Sky and just throwing a bunch of stuff out.
Blue Sky, man, look,
it's a sports app. It's a sports app.
That's exactly where I was going. It is a sports app. Like, people can leave all the politics aside and why you would care about another adult social media accounts and habits beyond me. But even if you do, man, there's a lot of good sports content. That's really what it is. They know what they are now, fully pivoted, fully embraced. All the best follows, including Dan, you can find her on Blue Sky, or they're still on X and you can bounce around. Do whatever you like. I'm just telling you, it's gotten better since I joined, and that was, I don't know, a year and a half ago. Is that preview written, by the way, already? The offseason preview for the Pats?
Yes, there might be some tweaks, but yeah, for the most part, it's been written. Yeah, for a while because it was going to be up whenever they got eliminated.
Right. Any tease of that? Is it too early?
I mean, I can.
Any extra something spicy? Like I've said, Chase Young's going to get a giant contract and probably walk anyway. I could see them wanting to bring him back, but
so it's let me pull it up to see. I could do that real quick.
Stephon Diggs extension is going to be a big one. And there are also fewer free agents than you would think. I mean, Jalen Hawkins, it's Chase Young are at the top of the list, which now I have such confidence in myself that I'm assuredly leaving someone off who just made the All-Pro team. But
yeah. So let's see. What do we got here? Looking at $39 million in effective cap space. That's the 9th most. But $8 million more with a Anthony Jennings release.
Release.
Yeah, I would think so, right? Like, I was just, they asked for some possible cap casualties, and a guy like that probably not playing quite as much can save as much money as probably anyone they can cut. So I wouldn't be super shocked. We look at also. Let's see. I think Onwenu extension, just kind of to lower his $25 million cap hit for next season. That probably makes a lot of sense. Someone you want to keep. That's going to free up money also. So the Patriots have a bunch of different ways to free up some more money if they do want to make one of those kind of splash, like you said, a Crosby, bringing a Hendrickson. I think that they have the path to potentially do something like that.
That is how you end a podcast. That is how you tease. The Patriots are going to open up a lot more cap space after they play in the Super Bowl. It's hard to have a better stretch like that. It is hard to find a better analyst than Dan Pizzuta. Thanks for hanging out, man. Obviously, we'll have you back. And I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hope you do also.
I will. See you, man.